losing, I know there was some story about livestock falling through the ice or any of those kind of stories.
Oh yeah, those things were happening all the time. There's life and death on the farm all the time. With animals. But we had a lot of fun as kids because we had horses. We raised cattle and sheep, but to herd the cattle and sheep, doing it on foot is really difficult. So we always had riding horses, and some pretty nice horses, just for riding. And then when we weren't working, we always, in the 10, 11, 12, we were playing cowboys.
Mhm.
On your horses?
On the horses.
Wow,
They had
real thing.
saddles and
Did you have your gun?
Roy Rogers pistols and
Yeah.
That
Were
would
they
be
pop guns or cap
cap
guns?
guns, some of them were. And then as we got a little older, Joe and I used to hunt rabbits. And he had a horse that you could shoot while you were sitting on the horse. And the horse would
Wouldn't spook
stand still, it wouldn't jump or anything.
Huh?
And I remember after a fresh snow, we'd get the rifles and Joe would get on his horse and I'd tag along on foot to pick him up, but you could see tracks in fresh snow and he could ride right up beside him and they'd be along the side of the road.
What would you be hunting for? Rabbits?
Rabbits.
Okay.
Because we could actually, in those days, you could sell the pelt, the rabbit pelts for like 10 cents a piece. And you'd shoot, like we shoot, 20 rabbits in a Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
And throw them in the barn, and they'd freeze.
Throw it in
And
your
then-
refrigerator.
then
I'll
next
make sure this
week-
thing's on.
What?
I just want to make sure it's on.
Oh.
Yep.
Next week, kill some more, and when you get a sack full of them, take them to
Well,
town.
they'd regroup.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't even
Rabbits.
skin them. You just bring the whole rabbit.
Bring the whole rabbit, and they'd pay us 10
Who?
cents a piece.
Who's they?
Well, there was a guy that was actually a fur dealer in those days. We'd take other hide, like the most valuable hide was a fox.
Mm.
Fox tail with a tail on it was
Yeah.
worth, I forget.
Oh, they were doing those collars, that
Yeah,
they
$6 or $8 a piece.
collars. And
Wow.
collars.
It's a good day's hunting.
During the winter, when there's snow on the ground, that was our main pastime on weekends, was hunting. And we had a trap line that we'd set traps and try to catch various types of animals. So we were outside a lot. That's what you do on the farm. There was no TV. We did have a radio. We'd try to get in on the night of the week. The couple like Jack Benny was always on Sunday night on the radio. So we'd have the chores done and get inside by 6 o'clock.
I heard someone say that probably, I know you had electricity. You didn't have electricity all the time though, growing up. But they would say that really at night it was, you're burning kerosene. It costs money to stay up.
Yeah.
And plus, there's not a lot to do, so people would go to bed early and just get up with the sun.
Yeah.
Well, what were some of your chores on the farm?
Well, on the chores, you always had all the animals to take care of. If you had cows, you have to milk cows morning and night.
Did y'all have a little dairy?
What?
You
Did
guys
you have a
were
little
never
dairy?
No, you were
Just
never
had
there.
your own milk cow
No, but we'd always had 3 or 4 cows just to
for your milk
produce
and
enough
butter
milk and butter
cheese? Did
and
y'all
skim milk. After we'd take the cream and make it into butter, a lot of times the skim milk you just feed to the pigs.
do- So you had
For
pigs
the
too?
cats.
Always had 2 or 3 pigs because we didn't butcher them for meat in the spring.
And chickens.
And I always had a bunch of chickens.
Now,
So
hold
you had to gather the eggs, and then in the evening you had to feed them corn or oats or.
So it
So-
would take you all day to do your chores.
Well, not all day. No, basically you had morning chores,
Then go to school.
and then go to school, and then you had evening chores.
So when you say butcher, would you take the live pigs somewhere, and or you guys would actually?
We did that until, you know, when Joe and I were gone and your grandpa was there by himself, he would hire somebody to.
So when you say so,
Do the
here's a
butchering.
here's a pig you've been feeding for what, 2 years,
No, not 2 years, like 6 months.
6 months, and then you bring him into the barn and you
Just
just
shoot him, and
oh, is that how you shoot him?
we used a .22 rifle for a lot of things. And then you scald them, put them in scalding water and actually scrape the hair off of them. And what's left is called the rind. Maybe you bought some.
Don't like them.
You don't like
No.
chitlins or
No.
whatever?
Or those pigskin thingies, or
Yeah,
fried rind.
yeah, fried rinds.
Ugh.
What is it? You
It's
scrape
the skin of the
Skin.
pig.
the
Pig
skin.
skin.
And you'd then shave the skin and about that much fat with it. And cut that into strips and throw it on the stove and make it crispy and crunchy, and you'd eat pig skins.
So you ever give these pigs names? I mean, like you wouldn't go out there and go, "Well, it's time to eat Freddy" or something, would you?
I don't
Babe.
remember naming the pigs. We'd name the calves, the cows, and the horses all had names.
Yeah.
What was your horse's name?
Well, the best riding horse I ever had was a horse we named Peggy. She really had a lot of class.
Now, the horses would live. I know horses will live to be 30, 35.
Yeah.
Did the horses on the farm live that long? Or
Oh yeah, they lived a long time.
And was she a mare? Because I heard they're real testy.
No, not necessarily. Not as much as a male.
Stallion.
We did a lot of farm work with mules.
Mhm.
My grandpa, she had a team of mules mules are so tough. They can work all day, sweat, morning to night. Next morning they're ready to go. They never had to stop and drink, or they could just work.
Wow.
So a mule again is a combination of a horse and a donkey.
Yeah.
right? But what is the combination of a horse and a donkey that a mule? What does a mule have that a horse doesn't have and a donkey doesn't have, but a mule does? I know they're bigger like a horse,
Yeah,
so they
they're
have the
bigger
power of a donkey, but in a
Yeah,
frame of a horse.
a big frame, and they were all sterile. They didn't reproduce.
Just by virtue of they're just automatically sterile.
Of being a hybrid between a donkey and a horse.
Really?
Now, about 10 years ago, there was some report, somebody out in western Nebraska said they had a mule that delivered a colt, but I don't know if anybody ever proved that, but
So
basically they're sterile.
So, which one? I don't know why I'm asking this, but a male and a female. Which one is the donkey usually the
father.
father?
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to
That'd
try
be
to
too
deliver
big.
deliver a
Right.
big.
Right.
So how just now how would you entice that, or that's not a natural thing to happen in the wild. So how do you
Well, it
Make
might
that-
be.
how do you make that happen?
Well, there was a way.
Or you just put them in a pen together and it happens, or
Well, it took a little encouraging. I forget how. There were
Put a hat.
guys
put a hat on the
Hat,
a
little
little bow.
petticoat,
some lipstick.
little cologne. She'd swing her purse.
Yeah, I have a little music playing.
Yeah! Doggy, doggy, doggy.
Okay, remember this is for a mixed audience. We don't want this being R-rated.
It's just a purse she's swinging.
Yeah, but anyhow,
Brian asked, I didn't.
that,
Well, those are
That's
life
one of the
questions
more-
about on the farm. If
Yeah.
you haven't grown up on a farm, it's kind of.
You didn't
Now,
take
wait a
him
second.
out there when they were doing that, did you?
So, what other animals did you guys raise besides?
I got to see the bull.
I know you sheep, but you sound like you always had.
chickens
Maybe I'm thinking sheep.
and cows. Or beef cow. You know, there's two kind of cow. There's the cows that we used for milk,
Mm-hmm.
and those are a special breed. There's several breeds that are milk producers, and then
Yeah.
there's breeds like Angus and which is the all black,
Yeah.
that you didn't
Those
use
funky
those for
things
milk.
with the knot on their back.
They raised a calf, and then you would, when the calf got old enough, wean it from its mother and start feeding it corn, and that's what happens nowadays that's where all of our beef comes from, are these calves that get
Mm-hmm.
fed and grow up to be 1,000 pounds,
Yeah.
and they're slaughtered. But we always had, a herd of
Meat,
what we
meat
call
cows.
stock cows, or cows that just raised calves.
Did you ever have any problems with rustling?
No, the only kind of well, yeah, occasionally there'd be somebody try to steal your sheep or not pigs, sheep mainly, because they're easy. But the one type of rustling that I think I talked about in that book about when we'd shear the sheep in the springtime,
Mhm.
back then wool was pretty valuable. One sheep would produce a fleece of wool that'd be worth $10 roughly.
Wow.
So if you had a couple of hundred sheep, that's $2,000 worth.
Yeah, that's some good money.
So when the wool was sheared, then there would be dealers come around to buy wool from the farmers.
Would it come to each farm, or you would
A
have
lot of times, or
market?
you'd call and say, do you want to make a bid on our wool? Or what are you paying for wool? It's kind of a daily market type thing, really. But people were quite often trying to steal wool
For the barn? Or
from the farmers.
I know, but where would it be? In the
It'd
barn?
be in the barn, in a storage
So
bin.
you would keep the fleece for a while, or what's the point?
maybe a month if you're trying to get a better price.
Oh, just waiting.
We
How
might-
would you package it?
Well,
I mean, did
the
it come in
fleeces, in fact, Joe and I, this was our job, was to tie the fleeces into a cube. You had a special apparatus, I wish I could show you this, and you open it up and you would run this twine around underneath it each way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd throw the basic fleece of wool on
And then the
there,
thing would come up and
and
fold it or something?
fold it into a square, and you'd cinch, then you'd grab these strings that you'd cinch that down tight, and then each fleece was a little,
Nice little
about that big,
package.
and you throw them.
And so you might have 100 of those? How many?
Oh, we
head of
had one
sheep
time,
or-
we had 1,000 sheep,
Wow.
so we had a lot of wool.
What kind of sheep?
Well, they were just
White?
the white-faced sheep. Yeah, my grandpa or dad didn't like black-faced sheep. Didn't like black. Well, no, I better not say that.
Just
But
for that
anyhow-
reason, though?
No,
Okay.
they're different in some ways, but
Were they pretty easy to maintain? Except you had to worry about
yeah,
coyotes and
you had to
wolves
worry
and,
about animals.
and foxes, I guess. Foxes do?
No.
they're too
No.
small. That was the chickens.
But occasionally hunting dogs would run the sheep. That's why about every 10th sheep that we would put out to pasture, we'd put a bell on it.
I
And
remember that.
at night, if you heard the sheep, if they were running,
That bell would go.
you'd hear the bell, so your grandpa would say, get the shotgun, we gotta go see what's chasing the sheep. So we'd go racing back with the shotgun. A lot of times these hunting dogs, people had coon dogs. They'd be out at night hunting coons.
And they get
Well,
goofed
sometimes
up.
they'd forget about the coons and start running the sheep.
Oh.
Not to hurt them.
Well, sometimes, yeah,
Oh,
they'd
sometimes they
kill
would
them,
get
kill
a
a sheep.
pack. A
Yeah,
pack of
if
coon
they're-
dogs.
So we shot a few hunting dogs.
Ooh.
What'd your neighbors think about that when they come looking for their
They
dog?
knew they shouldn't let them loose on our land.
That was a strong message.
Yeah.
Now, did y'all have fencing and all of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had
And so
fencing.
you had, that was probably one of your chores too, was checking
Oh, yeah,
the
build
fence line.
fence.
And with your horses, you'd go run the fence,
Yeah.
and then you'd have the barbed wire. And what was your brand on your cattle
Oh,
and
we
whatnot?
didn't brand. Didn't have
They didn't do that in
brands.
Nebraska? That's a Texas.
Iowa.
Or Iowa?
Because by that time, everybody had their land clearly fenced, and you didn't worry about losing. Although people did develop a notching system in the ears of the cattle.
Oh, I
A certain type of
remember
a
that.
notch cut in the cow's ear meant they were our cow. Because we had 25 black cows, and the neighbor had 25 black cows, and something happened to the fence.
Didn't
You
even
had,
know.
you had to have some way of knowing which one's yours and which one's theirs.
Yeah, and then they started doing little tag deals.
Yeah, they
with
did
the number or
tags.
something. That was.
Or we just had a
Right.
special notch. You just, when you were vaccinating them or something, you had a big tool and you just take a big notch out of their ear.
Now, did you
Well-
have to rope them up and
No, we
Do
just
some-
drive, no,
do the
These
dirty
weren't so-
work down under?
yeah,
You did?
yeah, we did some of that.
Well, why
Did
would
y'all
you
eat
have?
those?
Huh?
Did you eat Rocky Mountain oysters?
Not till I was at South Bend, Indiana, or South Bend, Nebraska, where they have the testicle festival.
Oh,
Down by
crazy
the farm?
Nebraskans started that trend, huh?
Yeah.
Why would you have both sheep and cows? Because to me, it seems like if there was good money in cows, or there'd be better money in one of them, and you just do more of that. Why both?
Well, I guess I don't know for sure, but just
Was that just
if one didn't produce some year,
so? It's kind of like a diversification kind of thing.
yeah,
Just
Plus,
to-
you were growing crops, corn and
yeah.
stuff.
And,
What
then,
would you grow?
and the cows would eat more corn than sheep do.
Hey Tanner,
So
let's come here and ask your grandpa a question. We're running out of questions.
we'd feed the corn to the cows, and your grandpa and my grandpa both liked sheep because there were two sources of income:
The wool and
the
the meat.
wool, and then when they'd have lambs. You'd get to sell in the fall. You'd sell the lambs. In the spring, you'd sell the wool. So you had two incomes each year from the sheep. Cows.
And you weren't hurting them. That's why I would, if I had to be something, I'd be a sheep farmer.
The only way the sheep got hurt was when they were shearing them. Occasionally, and some sheep shearers weren't as good as others. They'd cut them. It's
Well, I thought you guys did your own shearing,
No, Joe and I never did shear sheep.
so you'd hire a guy to come
We
in.
hired a guy, but we'd tie the wool. We'd catch you'd run in about 20 sheep. They'd have their machines set up, running off a little 2-horse Briggs and Stratton engine. You'd crank that thing up, and that was before we had electricity. And we'd grab the sheep and bring it over and set it down. This guy, all day long. I mean, shearing sheep is hard work.
I've seen that. The stuff.
Because they fight it, don't they? They don't just let
Well, they know how, if you set a sheep on its rear end and bend its head over, it becomes basically helpless.
Yeah.
And then these guys, they knew how to take that wool. They could shear a sheep in about 2 minutes.
And
but
would
to
they
do
use
that-
those long sheep shear things during your time, or did they have more?
No, they had, just like
clipper?
you've seen electric hair trimmers,
Yeah.
only with bigger openings. About that, and it just ran like this.
More like a grass trimmer.
And they could, over the back of the sheep, where they'd have the neck of the sheep, and they could they could take that wool off. But what takes time is then around their legs and around their head. But they could stand, these guys, I never forget these guys, they could stand, bend over those sheep all day,
Gosh.
shear.
What would happen
Good
if
job.
you wouldn't shear a sheep? Would they just?
They'd eventually shed the wool in the fall and late summer. It gets shaggy and they start losing it. But it looks terrible, they string it around.
Yeah, like a horse or.
Yeah, kind of shedding its wool. But
So-
sheep really need to be sheared every year.
Hmm.
So that would be in the spring?
You shear them in the spring, yeah. Mainly,
Yeah, because it wouldn't have any warmth.
yeah, you don't want to shear them too early in the spring. Or, you know,
Yeah.
some guys would get anxious, let's shear them in March.
Yeah.
Then you'd have a cold rain or something,
Then they get sick.
and you'd lose some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I might talk about is going to country school. Of course, that was,
Yeah, why did they never build a school close to anybody? Why was it always 10 miles away from everybody?
It had to have been close to somebody.
They
Well,
weren't
everybody says I had to go to 10 miles. Back in my day, I had to go 10 miles to school. Why don't they ever build those schools close to somebody?
yeah, that's just a story.
So how far did you have to go?
Well, actually,
You had to go 10 miles.
no, a mile and a half.
Mile and a half, okay.
And you rode your horse?
Oh, once in a while. Not, Joe had a pony that he would ride to school, but Nancy and I mostly walked.
Well, you showed us
It
where
was
that old
one room.
farm, where the old schoolhouse
Schoolhouse
was,
used to be,
in that original farm that you guys lived on
Yeah.
out there.
And it
but
was
then
a-
the schoolhouse that I actually attended is in Moulton, there in the historical museum.
That's the real building.
Yeah,
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 That's
we
not
looked
a
at that.
recreation. That's the
They
building.
moved it there.
that's the actual building.
Now, is it funded so that it'll be maintained throughout the years, or
In fact, I don't know about that. I presume, I don't know how they raise money for that Moulton Historical Society.
well, do they charge to go in it?
Uh, Don't think so, the last time we were there,
Hmm.
which has been quite a while ago,
But it's a one-room schoolhouse.
just one room.
So
Not
talk
very-
so talk about how you went up a grade, or 2 grades, or whatever it was.
Well, yeah, I took, when I was in the second grade, you know, to show you the type of teaching we got, the teacher, now at most, those country school teachers had taken 1 year of special training after high school to be a teacher, but some of them, I don't think even had that year. Well, in fact, your mom went, she took a high school course called normal training. And she taught part-time right after high school, before she had any, no, maybe she had 1 year of college, before she started teaching. But anyhow, the teachers basically say, all right, here's the second grade books or the third, you know, go through them and
Get to work.
get to work. Well, I guess I finished the second grade books. I was the only second grader. So they gave me the third grade books, and I was able to finish them also. So 1 year I took second and third grade
All in 1 year.
all in 1 year. And then I was going along, and when I was supposed to be in the sixth grade, I was going to be by myself. But my brother Joe and 2 other people were in, they were seventh graders. Well, the teacher didn't want to teach me sixth grade, so said, well, if you can keep up with the seventh graders, you can be a seventh grader.
So you
So-
actually went 2 grades up.
Yeah, and that's why Joe and I then, even though he's 2.5 years older,
Y'all graduated the
we
same-
went to high school in the same grade.
You were on the. Did he play sports, or
Yeah,
you guys were on the same
Like,
basketball team?
fast pitch softball, he was the pitcher and I was the catcher
That's cool.
1 year. But he didn't play basketball. Joe was always kind of chubby and slow.
Hi.
We
Yeah.
saw a guy like that just play earlier today.
Yeah,
He wasn't really chubby; he was just big.
yeah.
So now, what would your schoolwork be?
You mean in country school?
Yeah, so what would you?
Well, you'd read these like in geography. You have a chapter, and at the end of every chapter, there's a bunch of questions. So the teachers say, do chapter 14 and do the questions. So you'd have a notebook or a tablet, you know,
Mhm.
question number 1, and you'd search through and find the answer and write
Pepper.
it down. That was geography class.
Did she test you?
Yeah, they then had
every,
tests.
Every once in a while you take a test.
Yeah,
Then were you like, did they have 4-H and all of that?
yeah, but
Back then?
we never participated. My dad thought that was a waste of time. To, you know, 4-H, try to manicure these animals. It took too much time. He was going for volume.
Yeah.
Didn't want to mess with that.
Well, after your mom passed away, how long was it before he married Alice?
Oh, let's see, about 2.5 years, I think.
And was that kind of like an arrangement, or how was that?
No,
How did you meet her?
well, by then my dad was an insurance salesman, and Alice was a school teacher in a country school. She'd been raised over by Centerville, and you talk about, now her family was really poor. Her dad had been a coal miner over there by the Sheraton River. There used to be a couple of coal mines.
Piper.
He never made enough money, and they had 6 kids and lived in a little, their house was about the size of this office.
Were they all girls? I know there was a lot of girls.
Yeah, there were several girls, but no, there was also 2 brothers.
Okay.
But anyhow, Dad was out selling insurance, and of course he found out there was a single school teacher, and figuring she made some money, might want to buy some life insurance or something. So he called on her to sell insurance, and that's how they got acquainted. And
Well, how did he get into the insurance? I know he kind of did it to offset.
well, he was told when he had a heart attack when he was young, like 25 years old.
He did?
Yeah. And the doctor told him he shouldn't do manual labor, that he had to find something to do because his heart wouldn't hold up for manual labor. So he heard about selling insurance.
But he still did the farming, or did he?
Well,
He hired people.
he hired people, the neighbors helped when we were real young, and then, you know, Joe was about, he was 4 or 5, I guess. Before long, he and I were doing a lot of the farming. Dad would supervise, of course, and tell us what to do, but we actually did the work.
How do you know he had a heart attack? I mean, he's like out in the field and had a heart attack?
Yeah, and the doctor said, didn't know what to do for him, other than just told him to go to bed. Stay in bed, which he did for several months.
Wow.
He didn't exert himself at all, and presumably his heart healed itself.
Well, that's awful young.
Because in later, we lived to be 86.
Yeah. He never had any heart problems, did he?
No.
Wonder
Yeah,
if
he
he
actually
I
got-
wonder if he was misdiagnosed or something.
Well, I don't know, but that's why he got into the insurance business. In those days, they didn't have any guarantee, straight commission. Company
Door to door.
gave him a rate book and said, you're now an insurance salesman.
What was it? You told a story, but was it about Clarence though, where he liked it because there was no inventory?
Yeah.
Insurance is great, nothing to.
Well, there's 2 great advantages. One, you don't have to buy your inventory. And you don't have to wait for your customers to come to you. You can go see them.
Yeah.
Because that's what he'd do every spare minute. He'd be out. He'd be going down the road, and if he saw a house that he didn't know who lived there, he'd stop and knock on the door and say, I'm your friendly insurance man.
Now, is that what really started him making his money?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
the insurance?
And then
Not the farming.
during the war, he made a lot of money in insurance because people couldn't buy refrigerators and stoves because they weren't available during the war. So he sold a lot of insurance during the war.
So they went cold, but they had insurance. And they went hungry,
Right.
and they had insurance.
Right. And then he got in the used car business because in selling insurance, the most common excuse for not buying insurance was, well, I got to replace, my car's in terrible shape. I've got to buy a car before I buy. My dad said, well, what kind of a car are you looking for?
I'll tell you that.
We got some car. He was actually in partners with a mechanic there in Moulton.
How long did he do that? I
So we
wanna
had
do
a
that.
little inventory of cars?
Yeah, they always had 6 or 8 cars. They'd go to the auction up in Des Moines. I remember when we lived in Des Moines, occasionally he'd come out and see us
Mhm.
because he was in town to go to the car auction. They'd bring a bunch of guys along for drivers. If they had 3 drivers, they'd buy 3 cars
That's neat.
at the auction.
So he was an entrepreneur.
So
Yeah.
he got him, he was thinking.
That was another thing. He never worked for anybody else. He never drew a paycheck.
Remember you saying that about Joe, that when he first got his Social Security check, it's the first time I've ever gotten a paycheck.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
never had a paycheck.
Something.
Yeah. That doesn't happen too often anymore.
So what did Nancy do on the farm? She just was it traditional to stay in the, did she come out and help at all, or was she always in the?
Oh, a little bit, although she kind of helped take over. She was 8 years old when
She probably
our
did the
mother
chickens.
passed away. So she started learning how to do housework and did quite a bit of housework.
Because it was 2.5 years before he married
Mhm.
Alice, so.
And we ate with, our grandparents lived in Moulton. So on the weekend, every Sunday we would eat. We'd go to church and then go to one of the grandparents for Sunday dinner.
Oh, the monks moved. No, they were already there.
Doherty's.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about
I'm getting
my
them all
grandparents.
goofed up. Yeah.
In fact, my 2 grandparents lived right next door to each other for many years. And there was always kind of jealous if you went and visited one and didn't visit the other one.
Look
That's a
out.
bad
There
idea.
was jealousy.
What church did y'all go to?
The Methodist Church.
Methodist church.
What did
Moulton.
what was the story behind you going off to college, or something about
Well-
Clarence didn't want you to go, or something?
No, he wanted me to go, and I always dreamed of getting off the farm. I didn't like that hard labor. But my dad would say, and Joe never really liked school. I like schoolwork. Joe never liked schoolwork, so my dad would tell people, said, well, Dwayne's gonna earn his living with his brain, but Joe's gonna have to use his back. He's gonna have to do labor.
But he liked farming.
Yeah,
He did it all his life.
but
Didn't he?
you know, by the time he was ready, even when his kids were teenagers or later, he got to disliking farm. He didn't think you could make much money in the farm. So
No.
he in effect wouldn't let Anthony, his only son, become a farmer.
Yeah.
He says, you ought to go off and do something else. The farm life is too
It's
tough.
too hard.
You work all the time, invest your money, and if it doesn't rain, you don't get a crop.
Yeah.
If the cow dies, you're out, you're
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
So he's always encouraged him to do something else.
Hmm.
And he's now a real estate agent, Anthony is.
In Tennessee, is he still in Tennessee?
Nashville, yeah,
And that's where Joe lives now, right?
yeah.
And Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you decide to go to college where you did?
Well,
You didn't just get in a car and start driving across
No.
the country. Well, that was somebody else.
Oh, a little bit like that. I went, first year of college, I went to a junior college in Bloomfield. They had, right after the war, see, I graduated from high school in 1946, which was, right after the end of the Second World War. So several of
But
these
you were
small,
really young. How old were you? 16?
yeah, several of these small towns, because they passed the GI Bill, they saw, boy, if we could keep some of these veterans at home if we had a junior college. So they started, like they started one in Centerville, started one in Bloomfield,
Mhm.
and a lot of other. It must not have been very hard. We actually had classes at the high school played basketball on the high school court, but it was called junior college.
Yeah.
So I went there 1 year, and then really they just offered 1 year courses. And another fellow and I started looking around, where could we go? Well, the closest place was Kirksville. So we drove down there, and I forget, it wasn't much hoopla about just signing up for next fall.
How big of a school was it then?
Only about 2,000,
Well, how big is it now?
between 6 and 7.
And you were driving and all that when you were 16, I would imagine. Did you have a
Well,
car?
I turned 16 in the summer, right after I graduated from high school.
Okay. Yeah, you're.
Well, you always hear that, like, on the farm, 14-year-olds can drive. 'Cause you
Yeah.
drive- I assume you drove tractors when you were a lot younger.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I started driving a tractor when I was 12 years old. You know, nowadays you wouldn't dare turn a 12-year-old kid out on a big tractor.
No,
Not even a lawnmower.
not even a, something you
Riding
have
lawnmower.
at the farm, the
Yeah, the
Gator.
gator.
gator, not even a gator.
No, but, yeah, when I was 10 years old, I was driving a team of horses in the field, you know, doing field work.
You were a lot more
We're putting
mature.
up hay. A big part of the summer was always putting up hay. Because you had to have enough hay on hand to feed all these cows and sheep through the winter.
Yeah.
So we put up stack after stack of hay.
That is such a manual process.
Oh, yeah.
You had a great big barn and.
But we didn't have a baler. We didn't bale hay. We were putting up hay loose,
Ooh.
stacking it.
Why? Because baler, they're just too expensive?
Yeah.
Did you have trouble with mice and stuff in the hay?
Well, maybe they probably lived in the hay, but we didn't pay
It
attention
didn't
to
bother
them.
you.
Huh.
So when you went to Kirksville, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
No,
What did you just study business,
you
general
didn't want to
business?
be a farmer.
I just knew I didn't want to be a farmer, right? Yeah, I was interested in business, but then to get a job, and remember that back then Kirksville was primarily a teacher's college. It was set up by the state of Missouri as a teacher's college.
Oh,
So it was kind of natural to get qualified as a teacher with a major in business administration. So that's what I signed up for.
so, and then how'd you get to Bankers? Because you went to Bankers right out of college?
No, I taught.
Oh, you taught, that's right.
Taught
Well,
2
in,
years.
Where?
Well, 1 year I taught in Moulton, my hometown.
Where was the big house?
That was in Moravia,
Yeah, Moravia.
which is about 20 miles from Moulton.
And that you had Randy by then, right?
No, he
No.
was born in that house.
Oh, okay. In it?
Well, no, he was born in the hospital. But then, see, he was born in April, and I decided I wanted to get out of teaching. And that's when I went to Banker's Life in Des Moines and applied for a job and got.
why'd you want to get out of teaching?
Not enough money?
It was frustrating, not enough money, and I could see it wasn't going to lead very far.
What were you teaching?
Business courses like
At a college?
No, in high school.
At a high school.
You taught typing.
Typing, bookkeeping, shorthand. That was primary things. But
And is
back-
that where you met Isla Dean? Or did you
No,
know
no,
her
she
from
was in
grade
high school.
from school?
Yeah, she was in high school. So,
So how did you end up with Bankers?
well, I just saw an ad in the paper that they were hiring people.
Literally just saw an ad in the paper.
Yeah, drove to Des Moines and filled out an application. They called me and said, come in and for an interview. In fact, that's where I was the day Randy was born. I had this appointment.
Oh, that's that story, yeah.
Uh,
Bob Lloyd said, he wasn't even around when I had Randy.
No,
He was in an interview.
but I was getting a job. So then when school was out, he was born in April, school got out about second week of May, I think. And we moved to Des Moines the week before Memorial Day that year.
So when you look back on it, what do you think, you know, for the job that they were looking for, you didn't have the probably perfect background for it, but what was it you felt like maybe they saw in you that obviously worked out pretty good?
Back then, they gave every applicant an exam. It was supposed to become an aptitude. And there was a name for these placement exams. They don't examine people anymore. When you hire people, do you have exams?
Not exams, but we ask them some pretty tough questions. They have to show us that they know what they're talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
I suppose. Well, this was more or less, because they had jobs open in, you know, computer area or claims area or,
Mm-hmm.
and so they had various questions that would lead them to the right place to place you. So I did real well on the math part of it. And so they said, we'd like for you to be in the pension department, which was a lot of math, a lot of record keeping,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I got in the retirement. They just, if they'd have put me in the life insurance department, you know, that would have led me in a different direction, but they
Yeah.
put me in the pension department and started learning about retirement plans. That's how it all started.
When you were there with them, they, how did you go from Des Moines to Atlanta?
Well, in Des Moines, I'd worked up to where I was the assistant supervisor of what was called an pension underwriting. And in those days, we were helping employers set up retirement plans because the government had passed a tax code that would allow companies to deduct the cost of a retirement plan. Well, and a lot of employers realized that they could stash quite a bit of money away for themselves if they would include other employees. So we were showing people how to set up those kind of plans and get taxed. But after being there, let's say I was there in the home office 7 years. But I was beginning to, you know, try to figure out ways to make more money, because that's when you and Susan came along.
Mm-hmm.
You're like,
And
yikes.
I had 3 kids under age, and I was still only 27 years old.
Sounds like George Bailey.
Yeah.
And so I went over to the state, you know, the insurance companies have to file their annual reports with the state insurance department. And in those days, they had to list the top, I forget, 50 or 100 paid top salaries. So I went over to the State House. I wanted to know who was making the money.
Yeah.
Well, I found out the highest paid people were the field reps
Mm-hmm.
that were out running the
That's
field
smart.
office. So I said,
Wanna
maybe
be a
I ought to
field
be
rep.
a field rep. And so I talked to them, and when an opening came up in Atlanta, then they sent me to Atlanta as a field rep.
That was real smart.
Well, it just, you know, you gotta look out for yourself.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a famous quote from Lily Tomlin. Remember Lily Tomlin?
Yeah.
She said, I always wanted to be someone someday. Maybe I should have been a little more specific. So it sounds like you were kind of specific. You knew the exact title or role you wanted, or where the
Just
money
like
was.
his dad. He didn't want to work for anybody. He looked at what people needed, the insurance, and he heard the complaints and went and got in the used car business. I mean, yeah, pretty smart. Using your brain.
Yeah, and then I was in Atlanta 3 years and happened to run into a guy from Mutual who said they were wanting to get into the pension plan business. And would I be interested in interviewing for the job? So the next time the head of the group department was in Atlanta, I went and talked to him, and he ended up inviting me to come to Omaha. So that's how we got to Omaha.
Yeah.
And then how long did you work for Mutual first time?
5 years, and then I went with Carl Mammal and those guys. Again, thinking we'd make more money,
Yeah.
and we did.
And what was that?
That was a consulting firm.
But more pension stuff?
Yeah, it was still pensions and 401k plans,
And you did that for
16 years.
16 years.
And then Mutual, Jack Weekly wanted me to come back and run the pension department again because it had kind of floundered.
You were about how old?
I was 52 then. So I said, okay, 16 years with Carl, that was enough. And so and also I realized, this is one of my smarter decisions. I realized with Mutual, their benefits were a lot better than with Mammal. Primarily, there was health insurance before and after retirement,
Oh, wow.
and life insurance before and after retirement, which Mammal didn't.
Yeah.
You had to have your own. And the pension, the amount of pension I could earn was very attractive at Mutual for those last 12
I
years.
get. Didn't you have some arrangement where because you had previous service that worked out pretty well?
Yeah, those 5 years they picked up, counted them. So,
And you
What?
thought to ask about that? Otherwise, I'm sure they didn't.
oh yeah, I was well aware.
They weren't gonna
When
give
you're
it
in
to
the
you.
benefits business, that's
You
the
know all
first
the
thing you
benefits.
think about is, what are the benefits?
Yeah.
Well, I've told Brian and Susan and everybody, you know, when you were interviewing for jobs, you ask about in fact, first job Brian had, he was working at a baker's store, I think, carrying out. After he'd been there about a week, I said, have you enrolled in the 401k plan yet?
Yeah,
And
really.
he's a teenager working?
Yeah, he's 16. He says, what? I said, you gotta ask about the 401k plan.
That's funny.
Well, how did you find working with? I mean, you and Randy would actually go to a lot of meetings in common, and
Well, because
How-
we were reporting to the same.
yeah. So
Senior
how did looking back on that experience? Was that a good one or?
Oh, yeah, we had a lot of,
Did y'all both have Karen as an admin? Or was
No,
she
no.
wasn't ever your
no,
admin?
Karen never did.
She
work.
just was somewhere else that,
No, we had.
but you had the same secretary.
Secretary.
What was her name?
We went and
Sandy.
saw. Is that the one we
Sandy.
saw when you came
Sandy.
down for our wedding? You went out on the golf course. She was out there, or was that somebody else? Remember we were playing at this golf course. And you said, "I know a secretary, somebody who lives on this golf course." When we were,
Oh my golly, I forgot. No, it was a friend of hers.
oh,
Yeah, we were walking across, remember when we
You-
stopped at that house?
yeah.
At
Wait a
Lost-
second.
Lost
Before I tee
Creek?
off, let me talk to this person.
That was
over
at
here.
Lost Creek. or
Lost
something.
Creek, yeah.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that.
That's a small world.
Wow.
But you had her for a long time.
Yeah, she was my secretary, and then when I decided to retire,
She continued with Randy.
I said, you gotta get moved over and be Randy's secretary. Actually, well before I retired, because in a big company like that, typically, if you moved with somebody who became a senior officer, when that officer retired, you had to go find a job somewhere else. You didn't automatically stay at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
you
said,
did
"You're-
her a big favor.
You're better off, you go, this was like more than a year before I retired. I said, you go be Randy's secretary. And then.
What happened to his secretary?
Oh, I forget. This was when he was moving up. I forget what happened to. I said, you can get that job with Randy, and then you'll move up with him, and I'll be going in another year or so.
Yeah,
So
that's nice.
took care of her, pretty good shape. But no, Randy and I had a lot of good times. And then we'd travel on these trips, and so Vera and Karen got well acquainted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, should we take a break and maybe I'll transfer this over? We can kind of go
Yeah. You're probably
Ford.
getting tired of it, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I can tell my voice is getting a little hoarse.
You need to drink coffee or something.
Yeah.
So we'll do
You're doing
another.
good.
Yeah.
We'll do another one of these chats
Piper.
maybe later today or tomorrow.
Yeah, we can do that.
Learning a lot of stuff.
We haven't talked about my sports accomplishments.
Yeah, we gotta do that and his reffing.
Yes.
Oh yeah, reffing. That was something.
Okay. Well, we'll check it out. Let me see, because I'm afraid we may be. See how long we've gone.
Yeah, back it up and get it ready for Austin tonight, and then we'll continue tomorrow.
Set this up. This is. I don't think I think I'm in view here. Today is December 28th, 2007. And our guest of honor today is Dwain Horn, visiting from Omaha. And
Yeah.
this is an informal chat just to kind of talk to Dwain. So how do we want to start this?
At the beginning.
In the
First
beginning,
thing I remember, I was born.
I was born. It was dark.
To who? Who were you born to?
Clarence and Letha Horn in a little farmhouse in southern Appanoose County, Iowa.
You were born a poor.
Country boy.
White
were,
boy.
Were you guys considered poor by the standards of the community, or would you say
Yeah.
you were poor? Or?
Yeah, I'd say my dad had to work on the county roads because he didn't have money to pay property tax.
Oh yeah.
But they would let people do work on the road and then in exchange to pay for their taxes, county taxes.
What kind of work would he run? Big equipment or just
Well, they didn't
give
have
him a
big-
shovel?
He'd have a shovel behind a team of horses. That's the way they moved dirt.
So he'd do that to supplement his farm income, I guess.
Well, or to
Oh.
pay the county, yeah, specifically to repay the county. County said if you work so many days, that's equal to so much money. So if you owed $500 in taxes,
Just be like property tax.
yeah, yeah. Because
Wow.
one good for, I guess we weren't so poor because my dad did own some land. Always did own land, which his father.
Yeah, back up and just kind of fill us in on the sod and the single.
Yeah,
Your
see-
grandpa.
See, my grandpa had gone to Kansas to homestead land in the late 1800s, like 1894 or 5.
He had left Iowa to go to Kansas.
Yeah,
Yeah. And he had homesteaded what 160
60
acres.
That's a
In
quarter.
Napanee, wasn't it? Or
Close to Napanee, Nebraska, just south of Napanee, Nebraska. Napanee's right on the border. They opened up Kansas under the Homestead Act. So my grandpa figured out that was the way to become an owner of some land. So ownership of things has always been big in our family. In fact, your grandpa, my dad, prided himself in saying he'd never paid rent to anybody. He'd always, the land, the farm, and any buildings he owned, he never rented from other people.
Well, I have a story that I guess makes sense now with that background. Once I was down visiting Clarence, Grandpa Horn, and I don't know, I went down there quite a bit.
Down in
But
Florida.
yeah, but we went. I can't remember. Maybe you and I were down there together. But we went to the counter to get a rental car. I think he was there. I can't remember why, but I didn't have a credit card, so they would only rent a car if you had a credit card.
And he didn't have one.
And so I asked him if he would maybe rent the car for me or something, and he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what do you mean credit card? I don't need a credit card.
I pay cash.
I pay cash. Yeah, no, I don't. No one gives me credit.
Yeah.
It's like we can get the car.
Yeah, he had another problem like that year or two later where he offered to write a check in advance for whatever they wanted, but they wouldn't take a check in advance to rent a car.
He never got, to his death, he never had a credit card.
Right. Never had a credit card. If he couldn't pay by check or cash.
Well, do you think it was part of the depression mentality? I mean, I know a lot of people who survived the depression, that never left them, that they
Right.
just would not ever invest in the stock market, and it was all cash only. And
Didn't want to get in debt.
yeah,
Because during the Depression, a lot of people lost their land. They had loans on the land, they couldn't pay the loans, so back then a lot of insurance companies had loaned money on land, like Metropolitan Life, and so they come in and repossess the land and kick the guy off. That was a fairly common occurrence.
so he was a big believer in owning what you had.
Right.
Nobody tells you what to do when you own it.
And then down in that southern Iowa, it's hard to believe that he bought a farm right next to the small one that he started out with for $15 an acre.
Gee.
$15. He bought.
Well, what year would that, or era, or period?
That would have been like 1934 or 35.
But his dad was a homesteader in the sod house.
Yeah.
Single man.
My grandfather, yeah.
And
He
his
was
name
born
was
in-
Elmer?
No, Sydney.
That's Sydney.
He was born in 1874. And at age 9 or 10 in Kentucky. And at age 9 or 10, he became an orphan. Hello.
Yeah, keep going. Just, hello.
And he became an
Oh,
orphan.
we're doing a video
But
interview
there
right
was-
now. We gotta do that with you
A
sometime.
brother of his, an older brother that had moved to southern Iowa. And that's why I guess he came up to southern Iowa to live.
Followed him out.
Yeah. But then when he was 19 years old, let's see, that's 1874, 84, 90, yeah, in 1893, he went to Kansas to homestead this land. And the Homestead Act said, in order to eventually own the land, you had to build a house on it and stay there at least 5 years. And so that's what he proceeded, he saw that as a way to become an owner of land.
And who helped him build the sod house?
Oh, I don't know, I suppose the neighbors did, maybe.
And that's how he got to know Emily
No,
Monk?
no.
No, that's who Clarence married. That's how he got
His
to know
wife,
her.
my grandmother's name was Laura Bell
Laura
Monk.
Bell Monk.
Monk. She was one of 13 children. And they got married then in 1900.
Oh, that's right. And then they
And
had
proceeded to have 3
three
children.
kids.
My dad was the youngest. When he was about 3 or 4 months old, they just
Yeah, tell that
They were
story about
able
the
to
train.
sell the land. They headed back to Iowa where the land was better, where it rained once in a while. Out there in western Nebraska, or Kansas,
It's too dry.
it was awful dry.
But they loaded up the animals in a boxcar. Tell that part.
And some of their personal belongings. They didn't have a lot, in the other end of the boxcar, and hired the train to pull this boxcar from Kansas, through Kansas City, up through Missouri to southern Iowa, where they unloaded.
Well, it took them how many days?
3 days.
Yeah.
Must have been quite a journey with a baby.
And then the kids' names were.
Well, my oldest uncle was Raymond,
Mhm.
and then the only girl of the family was Floy. She was 2 years younger than Raymond, then my dad was 2 years younger than she was.
And was Floy her name? Her
Yeah.
full name?
Floy,
Oh, with an Y.
Floy. But she died at a very young age. She died in the 30s of leukemia. And the only thing
Oh, tell that one too. The what she did and then who she met.
Yeah, she did get a teaching certificate, so she managed to get a job teaching school in northern Iowa in a town of Algona, which is right on the Minnesota border. And somehow she dated or had a boyfriend, I guess you'd call him, that was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And we were so proud of this picture of her standing beside this fella in his uniform, a red coat, and pants, special pants, and a black hat. He was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Yeah. Dudley Do-Right
Yeah,
character.
right. You know, the Canadians that we know in Arizona nowadays, the police force in Canada is now still referred to as the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted. So like when we say our police or the cops, the Canadians say, well, the RCMP
That's a lot.
did
That's
this.
a mouthful.
Yeah.
Wait, I thought they called them the Mounties.
Well, that was abbreviation back then, but nowadays they just refer to their police force as the RCMP.
Huh.
You're talking about your Aunt Flo?
Floy,
Floyd.
Floy.
Oh.
I thought it was Flo.
Yeah.
We were talking about
She was age 34 when she died of cancer. And she's buried in Moulton, out there west of, I think we've been out to the cemetery
where Clarice is buried?
yeah,
Yeah.
Now, is your mother, is she buried out there as well?
yeah.
Now, tell us a little more about what her deal.
Well, she had a brain tumor. For a year and a half, the doctors in Centerville treated her for migraine headaches because she started having these severe headaches. And they just kept giving her more aspirin and stuff, about all they had.
Mm.
And, but then as her headaches worsened one summer, let's say it had been the summer of '43, the war had started. So there weren't many doctors around, but we had a doctor there in Centerville that had been there a long time. He decided maybe there was something more serious. And through my uncle Raymond, who then lived in Kansas City, they talked to some doctor down there that said it sounded like maybe she had a brain tumor.
So she was just having really bad headaches
Yeah,
all the time.
for over a year.
Mm.
Would you recall? You were only, what, 12 or something?
Yeah, I was.
Do you remember her complaining of the headaches?
Oh, yeah.
Probably in bed all the time.
Well, no, on the farm, we lived on the farm, she still, she was still up and around.
Mhm.
But in the evenings, she'd immediately lay down, and she always was wanting a cold washcloth. That's about all, put a cool washcloth on your forehead.
So there wasn't even aspirin back then, or?
Well, I think there must have been aspirin, but it
Didn't help.
didn't help that much. So finally, they decided to take her to Kansas City and maybe do surgery. My uncle down there had arranged for her to go to this hospital, which they did, but by the time they examined her and then prepped her, and she actually died on the way to the operating room.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was just, she was 38.
That was, but, I want to mispronounce the name again. Floyd.
Floyd.
That was your
aunt.
That wasn't her sister.
No,
That was Clarence's sister.
grandpa's
Yeah.
sister.
So what about her? I've never heard anything about her side, your mother's side of the family. How many children did she? Her family? Was she?
Well, she just had one brother, Raymond.
Yeah, Raymond.
Both of my uncles were Raymond.
And Raymond was the blacksmith.
No, that's grandpa. That was Elmer.
No.
Yeah, that was my mother's
Then,
father.
Then I'm thinking of the wrong guy. Who's the guy, kind of short little bald guy that was the printing press guy?
Yeah, well, he's my mother's brother, so he's my other uncle, Raymond.
Yeah.
You had two Uncle Raymonds?
Yeah, I had two uncles and they were both named Raymond.
Oh, that's the confusion.
And that's why my middle name is Ray.
Cover them both.
Yeah.
That was a wise decision.
And then we passed that name ahead on down to Susan.
Yeah.
That's how she became Ray. But
And then we might as well
anyhow,
get this
my
on.
grandpa Doherty, my grandpa on my mother's side was the blacksmith.
Oh, okay.
He's
Uh-huh.
the one that's shown in that painting in the kitchen.
How did Clarence meet your
Wow.
mom?
They were high school. They both
In
went to
Moulton?
high school in Moulton. Yeah, before my grandpa moved down to that little town of Cantrell, Iowa. At one time there was 3 railroads that went through Moulton. And he was a blacksmith type guy, and so he had a shop in Moulton where he did quite a bit of work for the railroads, repairing metal stuff or whatever you do with a forge and hot iron. But then I forget what happened with the railroad deal, because the railroad were still there, and he moved to Cantrell for some reason, which was 40 miles from Moulton.
Had to be north of there.
No, it's straight east.
East.
You go through Bloomfield and just keep going, and eventually you run into a little town.
Oh, I think there can't be a lot south of Moulton because that puts you in Missouri.
Missouri, yeah.
So he met, what was your mom's name?
Letha,
Letha at Moulton High School.
yeah,
So somehow your grandpa got back up to Moulton?
yeah. Yeah, that's where his farm was close to. And,
And then they had the 3 of you.
yeah,
And you're not the baby, are you? You're the second.
I'm the middle one.
Nancy's.
Nancy's younger than I am, yeah.
So clear up the story about, in fact, we were joking about this at the country club there back in November. Tyler and I and Connor joined in, and I said, well, your grandpa's pretty tough. He's actually got a big scar across his chest. That's black spot. They had the veterinarian out.
Oh.
So what's this real story behind that?
Well, I had a tumor in my right breast, and it just, it looked like it was still growing, and it not only...
What age, how old were you?
I was a teenager. I was like 13 or 14, still in high school, playing high school basketball, and the other players, of course, kind of made fun of me because I was developing a boob.
That's not a good thing for a 14-year-old to deal with. Have to deal with.
Well, there was obviously a growth in there. I can feel it. So my dad knew this old doctor in Centerville.
But he's a doctor.
Yeah, he's
Not a veterinarian.
Not a veterinarian.
Okay.
Took me over there, and he said, "Sure, I can take it out." So he made arrangements, and they actually put me out.
Well, I think so, yeah.
But he did kind of radical surgery. He
Right there in,
no,
what
in the hospital.
you were in the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
Oh, just a couple of days. But it was, he did a scar from
Good
there
night.
to there. But he got it all out. That might have led to cancer if I hadn't done anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my dad that had his tonsils out without anesthesia.
Oh.
Your grandpa. He
I had
swore
heard.
that was the truth.
He
He
just
did.
didn't want to go under.
No, the dentist or the doctor didn't want to mess with this anesthesia. He just said, "I can snip them out."
How old was your dad? Young or?
Yeah, he was young. He was like 20.
No, that's the horrible surgery, Linda.
Yeah, it gets that
In
age.
teenage and beyond.
They probably used Novocaine or something. They must have deadened it somehow.
Or whiskey or something.
Bite
Right
a
on
bullet.
the bullet.
But, you know, life was pretty crude back in the farm where you just kind of have to deal with everything without a lot of things that we now take for granted that you would do.
Improvise or do without, or
Yeah.
Well, what was that story that Randy told? I know he just made it up, but it kind of was talking about you and you meeting Vera, but it was something about life on the farm. If you you put a nail through your hand, you just grab the pliers and pull it out.
Right.
Well, that's because your dad doesn't communicate much.
Just
We didn't know about Vera.
I know, but
Yeah.
That was what he was talking about.
but what can you think back of any real, like with livestock?
And with Dad. But then after they were married, for some reason he moved 40 miles east to this little town of Cantrell.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, that's the name that's, you know, in that painting of the blacksmith shop
In the
kitchen.
yeah. That's what it says up there.
If you look at that sign carefully, it says Cantrell, Iowa.
Where does it say that?
There's a sign on the front of the barn or the building.
Oh, and this is a painting you had
Dan Boylan did.
Yeah, Vera did that for
Where is that painting?
Christmas for you, right? It's in his,
No,
didn't she? No?
it's in the kitchen.
Yeah, I know. It's over on that
Yeah.
wall by the table.
It's in your kitchen?
Yeah.
It's in the where you eat in the
Yeah.
kitchen. Over on the far wall. The other side of that wall is a washer
End
dryer.
of the window?
No,
If you're looking
On
out
the-
the window on the left.
east wall.
By the on the other side of the laundry room.
Yeah, backs up to the laundry.
Wow.
But what'd you say about Vera didn't have that painting done?
I thought she had it all framed and
Oh, yeah, she
something.
framed
She
it.
did something special for it one year.
But it was actually painted years before I even knew Vera.
Okay.
Back when
That'd be a
Dan,
neat thing to get a copy of. Put in your.
How do you do that?
You
well,
would have to
Yeah,
get permission from
take a
Dan
picture.
first.
you could take a picture of it, yeah, get a pretty good copy.
Yeah.
I mean, that we could frame.
Well,
Well,
Put
the
in
camera
with-
was a 6 megapixel camera, I bet you could take a pretty good
It'd
picture.
probably be a good idea to get permission from Dan, which I'm sure
which
he
wouldn't
would
be,
give.
yeah.
That'd be neat to go in the study with you. A little heritage there of your great granddad.
Mhm. Well, if you think you'd like to have it someday, you know, I'm starting making a list of who should get things. I'll put your name on
Well, just a copy.
it. Well, in a few years, you just have the original.
Well, hopefully it's quite a few years.
All right, so he moved to Cantrell.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty name, Cantrell. But he died when he was 60.
Mm-hmm.
Did he fight in World War One? Was there
No.
any horns that?
The only family member of our family that anybody knows of that ever in the military, neither my dad or none of my uncles were in, but one of my grandma Horn, formerly Monk,
Yeah.
one of her brothers was in the First World War. She used to have a picture of him in an old frame, you know, with those old black and white,
Mm-hmm.
in an oval frame that hung on the wall.
Was he killed in the war, or you don't know anything about it?
I don't know. Never did know what happened to him. But that was the only person in the Second World War. My dad and my uncle were too old. And Joe and I were too young.
Joe was almost, but the war ended, right?
He was 18 years old in
in 1946. So,
That was kind of close, because the war was it, I know it was, the war ended in 45, but was it, I don't know what month in the year it ended. I'm sure they still needed people though, immediately after the war to kind of just be around.
yeah, but they discontinued the draft. When they stopped the draft, that was really big news. You know, they started the draft up again during the Vietnam War,
Yeah, but they had to call it deferment, right?
but they drew a vote, they drew numbers. Because in the course of a year, maybe only people with numbers up to 125 would get called. While they might have 300 people in any draft board on file. They'd draw, I forget how the drawing worked, but I remember when we were on the way to Colorado for you to play in a baseball tournament when you're in Pony League.
Yeah.
They drew, it was Randy's year to be drawn. And I remember we listened so close because they announced the numbers each time they drew.
Ugh.
And Randy even by going to college, he would have had to have gone?
Well, no, he would have had to gone when he finished college. Had
Had
the Vietnam War not ended.
So he probably would have gone for a graduate degree.
Yeah,
He-
PhD.
Well, they drew his number. His number was 64.
Oh, they drew it.
Yeah. So he would have definitely been drafted had the war not ended.
Ugh. How many people would have had 64? I wonder. Because 300, that's not very many people.
I forget how that worked.
Well, something just like it's your birthday or something, day of the year.
Yeah, it had something to do with the day of the year.
Oh, gosh.
Because he was born in April,
Yeah.
well, that wouldn't be 64.
Hmm.
No, I
Might
forget
have
how-
been.
120 something.
But I remember so
100 something.
vividly of tuning in and being tuned in on the radio while we were driving to Colorado, because that was the day they were doing the drawing.
Good grief. Just about ruined your whole trip, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a trip too. I remember you telling a story. The boy that we gave a ride, I forgot his name, but I guess he died years later got robbed on a beach in Florida or something.
Yeah, let's see, who was that?
And he got killed?
I mean, as an adult, but
They killed him when they
Yeah.
when they
robbed him.
robbed him and killed him.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Yeah.
No. He rode. We were only 12, 13.
Yeah, but,
We gave him a ride.
oh, that's right, and then he
came home,
died in
And
later
then you
life.
read years later when he was
That's
fighting
right.
his 40s.
That's right.
I don't remember his name.
Mm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Why did your dad buy land, want to go to Florida? Well, tell that.
Well, just
What was that story?
He'd always had a heart problem, you know, I told you, as a young man. Therefore, he was eternally what we call thin-skinned. He hated cold weather. And he went to Florida in the winter just because,
He didn't want to
You
get
go where
sick,
it's warm.
possibly.
Was it true that he just kind of didn't really have an end point in mind? He just kind of, his first time down there, he just drove and
started driving around and he found Winter Haven somehow.
said, this is
Thought
it.
it looked like a nice little town.
Kind
So
of like,
was that when he? Yeah, it had to have been when he and Alice were married.
Oh, yeah.
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 So what? You were grown probably and married, and
Mhm.
how old was he then?
Well, they went pretty young. Dad was only 56 or 7, and Alice was only 46 or 7. I mean, and we used to talk about the fact that she probably felt out of place down there with all these retirees.
I
She was
bet.
only 46 years old.
Yeah.
And they joined, they used to belong to, remember that shuffleboard court that he'd always take us up to the, what do they call that place? The, something,
Community
Community
center?
center or something?
yeah, it was a senior citizens rec center, kind of. And they had shuffleboard courts and I don't know what else, but
That's all I remember, shuffleboard.
tourist club, that's what they call it, because Dad was president of it for a couple of years. But they'd take it up there and, you know, there was a lot of gray-haired people then.
Yeah.
Well, in that one story,
About the guy
The-
parking his
the,
car and he got stuck in gear.
Oh, that was terrible.
did your dad, because Brian told me, I think this was before we made the trip down there, would he check his account, go by the bank very,
Oh, yeah,
almost daily?
yeah.
They
Or
do
was
it
that
at
a
the bank.
myth?
Because in those days, he was buying a lot of these municipal bonds that had interest coupons attached.
Yeah.
And so every 6 months, there'd be a coupon come due, and he'd take it up to the bank, and they'd
He
cash
had
it.
so many of them that something was coming
Something was
due.
coming due every month, several every month.
Yeah, so he was a early coupon clipper.
Clipper, right. And the very late in his life, he got so upset because a lot of banks quit cashing them for free. They had a service.
Oh, of course.
You know, you
Boy,
had,
they
I can see where there's a lot of trouble for the bank, because they then had, like, if the bond was on the Sarasota Waterworks, they had to submit the coupon to whoever the agent was for Sarasota to collect their money, so they started making a service fee to, my dad thought that was the worst thing that ever happened. How
Yeah.
could they justify all the money he'd given to the bank? He just couldn't understand why they would charge him. But a lot of the banks down there had free orange juice, always a little bubbly thing over in the corner where you could help yourself to orange juice. Because Winter Haven is right in the center of the citrus
Rose.
belt
Oh,
across central Florida.
yeah.
And so he'd always go up there for his morning orange juice.
The thing I understand now is that there are more banks now. It's like every corner there's a bank.
Yeah.
And Melanie and I were going, I never go to a bank. Why do we need more of them? What do people do at banks?
Oh, they find a lot of things to do.
We use them for a safety deposit box and that's it.
You do all your banking electronically, right?
Well, I mean, my paycheck's automatically deposited and
We go to the ATM there, that's about it.
I just don't
They make a
know what
deposit every
justifies
now and then.
all
But
these
that's
banks
out-
being
but
built.
that's out-
These big
Outside.
buildings, yeah. They gotta loan money. See, the way they make money, as you know, is they borrow money from the Fed at what is it now, 4.25%, loan it out at 6 or 7,
Yeah, so they do.
and that's how they make money on the
Just bring
spread.
people in the loan, you know, for loans.
Yeah,
So Clarence would go down there and they would stay the whole winter.
well, they used to come home at Christmas time, but their stays got shorter and shorter, because coming home for them wasn't, they'd fly to St. Louis, and Joe would drive down.
They would fly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
For several years, they'd fly either to Des Moines or St. Louis. And either way, it was still, you know, pretty good drive
big trip for
for
Joe.
Joe to go meet them. And if they had some bad weather, to heat up their old house, you know, they had their house put away. So in the last few years, they just stayed with Joe. They didn't go warm up their old house, you know, that old house they.
What, in that old house, when he died, was it, or Alice died? When did that old house get
In
donated, I guess, or?
Moulton,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, when
the
they,
multi-carpets.
yeah, when they bought a little house in Centerville, Alice always had wanted to move to Centerville.
Yeah, the big city.
So when they moved, they finally found a house over there, and so your grandpa decided to donate that old house to the church.
Oh, that's where it was.
And then the church sold it actually to some family, and used the money for that's what he wanted.
That's
But do you think that thing is still standing?
Well, it went by there. When did we go over there? A couple of years ago at my 60th. In 2006,
Yeah.
I was there, and it was still standing. So, well, there's a lot of houses in that town that are just as old.
Now, you never lived there, you were always on the farm.
Yeah. And then by the time they lived there, well, let's see, yeah, they still lived on the farm when you guys were born. Remember the pictures were down at the old farmhouse? We'd stay down there.
Oh, yeah.
But when they moved to town, we were long ago. We were in Des Moines. Then when they'd come to Florida each winter, we'd see them. When we lived in Atlanta, they always stayed with us on the way down, and they'd see us on the way back. And for a few years there, you know, we had that boat
Yeah.
that we, during the summer, we'd keep the boat in Atlanta. In fact, we went boating on that Lake Lanier that they're talking about that's about to dry up in Atlanta. It's like 15 feet below all
Yeah.
time.
I think we've been getting all the rain.
Yeah, yeah, but anyhow, they'd leave the boat.
They would have it in winter.
They'd have
and
it in
then
the
they'd
winter,
bring
and
it.
then they'd tow it up to Atlanta,
That was a nice
We'd
little
have-
deal.
use it some in the summer, and then they come back in the fall and they'd haul it back to. So, Dad loved to go boating, because in Winter Haven, all these little lakes were connected by
It
canals.
looks, yeah, y'all had the back way into the,
Cypress Gardens.
Yeah,
the show.
oh yeah, he thought that was most fun to get in there without paying.
Because they don't even allow, I heard somewhere they don't allow that anymore, somehow they. I don't know how they can outlaw, you have a right to be on.
You know, somebody bought Cypress Gardens, well, it closed down for a while,
Oh,
and then like Disney bought them or somebody, but I believe they're back open. Still doing the ski show.
yeah.
Well, then Clarence was there before, old Walt bought his land,
Oh, yeah.
his swamp land.
Yeah. Did a lot of sightseeing trips over there while they were building Disney World.
Yeah, I can vaguely remember some of those trips. Grandpa
Well,
thought they
but
were
that was
crazy.
quite a production.
Oh, boy.
What was the story behind that old farmhouse being torn down? Remember Joe telling some story about when Clarence died, that he made a promise that he would tear it down or something, I don't know.
Yeah, without really clearing it with Alice. Even though they didn't live in it, Alice hated to see the farmhouse go. But
So he,
very soon after your grandpa died, Joe had the bulldozer.
I thought it was after Alice died.
No, it was after your grandpa died.
So why did Clarence want it torn down like that?
I'm not sure. Let's see, what did Joe say? He said, well, he hated to see it just rot down. Why not tear it down, clean that area off, and, you know, and that was something your grandpa, when he'd buy a new property, a farm or something, you know, his favorite activity was to get a bulldozer out there. If there was old buildings, push them down and burn them. If there was old fence rows, clear them out, you know, clean things up.
Yeah.
And it made, for a few dollars, it made any property look a lot better, just to clean it up, you know. So he thought the farm down there would look better if that old house wasn't there. So Joe had this guy with the dozer, he just started pushing, and they pushed it down into that little, there was a kind of a ravine, down the hill a ways there, set it on fire and burned it.
Pretty nostalgic.
Did Alice ever know?
Yeah, she knew because she was upset with it. But, and then Bobby took over, you know. But I was really sad to hear Bobby's death.
He died really young.
I
What
didn't
was
know.
he? Was
I
he
don't
still in his
remember that.
60s?
He was early 60s or even 60.
When did he die? Heart?
No, of
He died just months before.
some kind of cancer that I still say is, and a couple of neighbor fellows about his age also died.
Oh,
I think it's his
chemicals
fertilizer.
and whatnot?
These guys weren't careful. I remember when fertilizers, they started using the anhydrous ammonia. These guys, you know, they'd always show they're supposed to wear masks and gloves.
And they wouldn't.
These guys, Bobby wouldn't mess with that, you know. And I think that's what killed him.
Mm,
They just got too much exposure to that chemical.
yeah.
In fact, one neighbor accidentally, you know, they have these to put that anhydrous in the soil. They have these things with big tines that go down about 2 feet in the ground, and well, he was greasy. They had a hydraulic lift, but when they weren't using it, it was up out of the ground, or these big spikes were up out of the ground. He's servicing it, oiling it or something. Thing accidentally releases, one of those spikes goes right through his foot
With the stuff?
with the anhydrous. So they had to take his leg off,
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
and it finally killed him.
Oh gee.
And another guy lived right between where your grandpa's farm was and Moulton, up there by the curve. He got too much of it and hung himself in the barn one day because it had gotten into his brain, and he was, you know,
Boy, he knew his time was,
Affected him mentally?
yeah.
or he just knew his time was coming.
Well, no, I think it just affected him mentally. He didn't necessarily know what he was doing. But that stuff is wicked.
They still use it?
Yep,
Ooh,
but you gotta be careful.
rank.
Well, hold on. So it ends up in our food supply?
That's how that's a fertilizer. Anhydrous ammonia is what they use on corn and soybeans.
Huh.
Just don't eat corn and soybeans.
Yeah,
Well, that means you don't eat.
yeah.
Well, tell the story of you purchasing your land over in
Oh. In Louisville? Yeah. Well, I don't know what prompted me to do it, other than I just, having grown up in the country, always thought it would be a good idea to own farmland. And when I first got a little extra money put aside, by this time we'd moved back to Omaha from Atlanta.
Mhm.
And so I was talking to my dad about buying some land, which he, of course, thought was a good idea. So I started talking to him about buying some land over around Moulton. But the best advice he gave me, I think, was, he says, you don't want to buy land around Moulton. He says, it's too far away. It's a 4-hour drive. How often would you actually get to enjoy it or go out?
Go and stand in your field.
Yeah, he says you ought to have something close enough so that you and the boys can go out there on the weekend and putter around. So then I started looking around Omaha to find some land. We even, I don't know whether you remember, Brian, we used to on Sunday afternoon go look. We even looked at a couple of old rural schools where they had 2 acres and an old schoolhouse that wasn't any longer being used for school.
Yeah.
So some people had converted those to houses with the 2 acres. I remember looking at a couple of those and deciding, no, that
You wanted more land than
wasn't
that.
enough land. There
Yeah.
wasn't anything to do on 2 acres.
Yeah.
And so I looked quite a while till my secretary, this, what's her name, last name Zink.
Sandy.
No, no,
Saint.
this was
That's
my
what's
secretary.
one of his, Sandy.
Yeah, that was at Mutual.
Yeah.
This is when I was working with Carl Memmel. Kay Zink, Eddie's mother.
Yeah.
She says, she told me one time that they'd been out looking for land because they lived in North Omaha, and she wanted to get Eddie and the other boy said, we don't want them going to North High or Tech. They were in that part of town where they would have to go there for high school. So they were out looking for a place to live in the country also. So one day she came back and said, and her husband at that time was a school teacher. So he knew a teacher down in Louisville who knew that the Hinkle, the last of the Hinkles died, and this land, this farmland was in an estate, and they were trying to sell it. They had 6 heirs, 3 boys and 3 girls that survived their parents, and they were the heirs. And they wanted to sell the farm so they could divide up the money. So I got in contact with them and ended up, well, I'd agreed that if, first of all, Kay said, well, maybe we can do it on partners, you know, going on partners and buy some land. And I said, I didn't really like partnerships,
Yeah.
but I agreed to, I said, how much land do you really want? Well, at most they wanted 20 acres,
Mhm.
and this was a 120-acre farm.
Oh, that worked out evenly.
Yeah, so I said, how about if I buy it, then I'll sell you 20 acres off of the west side there.
Yeah, that was nice, because that creek, that was just about 20 acres.
Kind of divided, yeah, the creek kind of naturally divided it. And so that worked out good. And then you know, for 2 or 3 years, we used that old farmhouse as our shelter when we were down there.
Shelter. Oh,
And then somebody came along and wanted to buy it. Well, Jim Hutchins.
That's a neat house.
So sold that piece, and then his parents wanted to move up there too. They used to live down by Syracuse. So the parents wanted to move up there.
But people living there aren't, I mean, or no, he moved further up the hill.
Yeah.
Is that right? He built the house right next to the cabin,
Yeah.
and then he sold it and moved up further.
He had 10 acres, but then they passed another law. There used to be you had to sell actually more than 10 acres to avoid having to have it platted and zoned.
Right.
So actually, I sold them 10.1 acres.
Now, that was the people that kind of made the dugout house?
Yeah,
Okay,
earth zone.
yeah.
So, but then they changed the law and said anything up to 2 acres, more than 2 acres doesn't require zoning.
Hmm.
So they went up on the corner, the very corner,
Yeah.
and bought 2 acres and built that small.
Oh, you
white-
hadn't sold it. That wasn't part of the original 10.
Yeah. He
It was-
bought,
it
he
was-
bought that off of the people that bought his house, the earth.
Oh, I see. Or he didn't sell the 2 acres to him.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's the way it worked. So now he has 2 acres and this guy
So
here
why did
has
he? I
8
don't
acres.
understand why he got out of his house.
He said he thought it was bothering his arthritis because
Too
it
damp.
always enough moisture because it was
In the ground.
like living in a basement all the time. And there was always moisture and he thought that was bothering his health. And then that big a property, all those trees, he was getting to the age where he couldn't really maintain it.
Yeah. But you didn't sell that land.
Hmm?
That's not the land, or that was the 20?
No.
No.
No, that was the 10.
You sold 10 out of your 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd sold 10 already where the old
Oh, the
house was.
farmhouse.
That was the Jim.
Yeah.
And by the way, I ran into Jim late last summer, like in August. And he was asking me if he could still hunt. They like to hunt deer and turkeys.
Was that y'all came up on that one time when we were there with the gator? And they had just killed that deer?
No, that was a friend of Keith's.
Oh,
But anyway, I assured him, and so I said, is your wife still a hunter? Because she'd actually killed a deer with a bow and arrow some years in the past. He says, well, she doesn't live here anymore.
mm.
Said, about 2 months ago, she just left.
Hmm.
I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. He says, yeah. She went to live with some other farmer over by that little town of Murdoch. Remember where the grain elevator was? Said
That's
she,
strange.
so he's back by himself. But anyhow, so I sold him 10 acres, and then I sold his parents 10 acres.
And they had 80?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what's there now.
And then you leased and finally sold to
No,
the state, or
no,
you
no,
still leasing?
Still leasing, 55 acres. And that's what makes it into a farm, which saves a lot of taxes. In fact, I had to go through a big hassle this fall, or this summer, late summer.
Well, I thought that was pretty much all Susan's name then. Or,
Well, 75% of it is, but,
but you still do.
What was the hassle you had to go through?
well, they have what's called a green belt rule around most cities where land might be available for development. And if it's available for development, then it's worth more than if it's just being used for farmland.
We have that here in Southland.
Do you?
Yeah, you have to have so many acres, and it has to have, I don't know, certain things met in order to be considered farmland. You're taxed at a much lower rate. Yeah.
Well, so this year they sent out a revaluation showing the taxes tripled because they said it was no longer farmland.
Hmm.
Because there's several houses being built around there. And Ben Nelson, who's a senator, he had some land across the river on the north side of the Platte, 80 acres that he plainly used it for hunting. Well, they said that's not agriculture. So it was a big
You need to go put a cow out there.
big deal, that he hadn't paid enough taxes. And so then they started looking at everybody's property. So I filed a protest and told them we rented the land to the park. But I didn't tell them what the park did with it. So they come back first, they denied it. And I said, well, what does the park do with it? I said, well, they use it for pasture for the horses. And that's agriculture.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Well, you
Anyhow,
gotta
so I went and had the park superintendent write a letter to the county.
And it's not just like anybody. You're doing it to the state, a
I mean,
state
it
park.
is benefiting the people.
Yeah, in fact, the superintendent of the park said, gosh, if you have to pay all that additional tax, you'll have to raise our rent. I says, yeah, I
You
think
better
so.
write a good letter.
Yeah.
So he wrote a letter to the county assessor and they reversed it. But guys, we've been doing that now. And looking back at our records, I was checking them. I've rented it to them for 25 years.
Is that right?
Everybody should have bought it for me.
They've paid us almost $70,000 in rent
Over 25 years.
over 25 years. And that pays all the taxes. That's why it's really self-supporting.
Yeah, that's a nice little deal you cooked up there. How'd that happen? How'd you work that deal? Did they, I know you got but you came up with that one over and
But they approach you, or you approach them about the idea?
I think they approached me. Yeah, I think so. But
they
I
had
got
a
it.
couple of horses get loose one time and went up there on that top of the hill and they were just happy as could be and they said, boy, we sure would like that land up there. Look how happy those horses are.
And, when they approached me, we didn't have any fences. You know, when you guys used to ride the motorcycles around, there were no fences.
Right.
I said, what do we do for fences? And they said, well, we'll build them. And they brought a bunch of guys from the state penitentiary out there and they built.
Oh, really? Our fences have been built by the prisoners.
Yeah,
The chain gang.
the guys that wanted to work out there, so, or were willing, you know, they were trustees. And, so they came out and built the fences.
That was a good deal there too.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been pretty lucky.
Plus,
But-
you could go. You had a key that you could go on that
Yeah,
land. Because I remember doing that when
Yeah.
I came down and
all the boys still, they
It's
go
just
back,
beautiful.
they drive back to the pond all the time.
and look at all those horses out there. And
Yeah. But boy, over the years, you can really see the difference in where that big ditch is. I mean, it's moved as much as 50 feet one way and 50 feet another way. And
just from rain
Which big ditch?
Erosion.
Oh, down there, as you come down the hill.
yeah,
and they
Yeah.
peeled that huge tree from
Well-
the salt lick deal, right?
yeah. Yeah, that was too bad. But we used to be able to cross that creek, you know, with the tractor when we had
Okay.
that land on the other side.
But, I mean, it's
But now
pretty, I mean, it could be reclaimed with some pretty good bolt and dozer work, right?
Yeah, you'd have to do a lot of dozer work.
Oh, Brian would love that.
Uh,
But you'd have to do something to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
But I guess that's I mean, it's pretty natural for a
But
creek
some of
to-
that limestone, doesn't that, yeah, that house was made out of limestone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Find some loose pieces of that and make
You'd have to, it'd be a major, because I've seen that ditch right after a rain, when it's running totally full. I mean, that water is moving down there so powerful, it just sweeps trees and everything with it.
probably best to just let it run its course.
Yeah.
So y'all would go down every, you didn't wake up your boys the way Clarence did you?
Yep. So we're burning daylight.
With the hose at the window?
Oh, no,
He'd do the light just turn the light on. That's
Well,
how, did you see Max yesterday when his dad came down, how he looked when he came down? That's how I used to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you
So
guys didn't
what
stay
age were
up
you
that
when
late.
when your dad bought the land? 7th grade or
I was in
so?
8th grade.
8th grade. And then Randy left for college that year, so. it was
Yeah, so
probably-
why was it, why didn't you buy it earlier? I guess maybe.
Well, it
maybe-
wasn't available. And
Well, I know that farm wasn't, but why didn't you buy land earlier?
I didn't have any money.
Oh. That's good reason.
So y'all would go almost every Saturday?
Oh, we went a lot of course, he had sports,
We got a lot of Sundays.
a
Oh,
lot of
Sunday.
Sundays. Then during the summer, you quit playing baseball, and so during the summers, we'd go out fairly often.
When did you build your chicken coop house?
We didn't build it, that was that was down by the old house.
You dragged it up. When did
We
we drag?
moved it when we built the cabin.
Oh, I thought you copied the storage chicken coopy thing and just
The
copied
cabin.
it. The cabin.
The cabin started off, I thought it's kind of I thought at one time when we first dragged the chicken coop up, you were thinking maybe of adding on to it or making it part of that would be the cabin.
No, we were
I'm
thinking
talking about the
about
cabin. When did he build the cabin? You built the cabin.
in
That's what I'm talking about.
1978,
Okay.
the summer that Susan went to Washington to summer school with her friend, remember her?
Oh, yeah.
And Lee, somebody
Yeah, wow.
spent the summer in Seattle going to school at the University of Washington.
She stayed?
She,
The whole summer,
well,
yeah.
for 2 months or 2.5.
That's a gym.
But, no, we thought about that. You know, you and I that winter, before that, the summer of '68,
Yeah.
you and I spent a lot of Saturdays and Sundays building the framework so we could move that chicken out.
Yeah, I remember that.
Actually jacked the building up and put those,
And then you just timed it so that when you had some dozer work done, you'd have the bulldozer pull it up.
but in the dozer work we were having done, he was digging the basement for the cabin.
Oh,
So at that point, we knew we were gonna build a new cabin. And we pulled it up there just for storage, like we kept the motorcycles in there,
yeah.
things like that.
So it was over by the limestone house at one point?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was a chicken house
Yeah.
down there at the limestone.
It was to
By
the-
the barn, sort
It
of?
was up towards the tin barn, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
more up the hill.
Okay,
But we just put these two big runners, 4x4 runners, the length of it, and ran a cable between the two, and in effect just made a hitch. And he backed the dozer down and hooked on, and it's just like a giant sled.
But
that would have
it
been
did-
fun to watch.
It didn't quite make it. I remember it started breaking apart up on the hill.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe where it ended up was just like, well, this
Right
is
there?
it. This will
Oh,
do.
oh no, that was the garage. Remember we?
Oh, that's right. It got so torn up, we just burned it.
Yeah.
We just said, oh, what the
So
heck?
you tried to
That's
do
right.
There was
two
a
things.
little garage down there. We decided to move it. We were just pulling it with the tractor,
Yeah.
but it didn't. A garage didn't have any kind of framework under it,
Yeah,
and it started one side started falling off.
So we just put a
had you a
match to
bonfire,
Yeah, we've had a lot of fires.
yeah. A lot of tree chopping too.
Yeah.
Your son is a tree chopper.
Well, I tell you, you get Justin and Tyler on that chainsaw, and they're a couple of tree choppers, I'll tell you.
Well, if we moved into this house, we had quite a few trees that had to come down. We're gonna hire somebody to do that. I said, oh no, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm out there knocking down huge trees.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
freaking
and
out.
then he got the tree up here. I don't remember what you were doing. Were we cutting that down? But the chainsaw got stuck.
Yeah, that
And
happens.
he is at the very top of the extension ladder. Melanie! Melanie! And I'm like freaking out because that is exactly what I did not want, you know?
Oh, good.
I can see that today. You're just holding on the top of the Melanie! I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't remember what we did, but you got down.
Nowadays, they actually have a chainsaw on the end of a big pole, and so you can stand on the ground
Yeah, that's
and
a
do a
lot
lot of
safer.
trimming.
I don't like getting up high in the ladder.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of fun down there.
How long did it take to build the cabin?
Oh, just one summer. Even though we had a big catastrophe during the process.
What
Oh,
happened?
the foundation caved in.
Yeah,
Because it rained or something?
yeah. It rained 6 inches one night. And they built the foundation, but they hadn't done the backfill. You know what the backfill is around?
I can imagine.
But they also hadn't put the
Oh,
downspouts.
in the back on the back end of around the
Because we had
foundation.
Oh, the
base-
frame was already up?
Oh, yeah, the cabin was up.
Wow, I thought it was just the foundation.
No, the cabin was up,
That is a
and,
good
but they hadn't
How
put
come
the,
why wouldn't they backfill it before they start framing the house? I wonder.
well, they said, let's see.
Seemed like you'd do that.
For the very reason, they said if you move soft dirt in around the foundation, then it gets wet. That's what
pushes it into
creates
the
the
middle.
force.
Oh.
Well,
And then
So
if you
they
have the
put the-
frame and the cross
yeah,
frames, then it would hold it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they put the cabin up, and they had the roof on and everything, but they didn't have the downspouts on yet. Rained 6 inches, dumped it right in next to the foundation where this loose backfill,
Oh wow.
and the west wall caved in to the basement. Here was all these cement blocks, and we've been dumping those cement blocks all over the place ever since. Remember the old blocks? So they actually got a front end loader down in there somehow.
But obviously the house didn't cave in.
No,
There's
because the
enough.
3 sides of the foundation were still good.
Oh, that lot. I don't remember any of that.
And so they had to clean out all this mud and use cement blocks.
And that
And
was,
they just hauled that out and dumped it somewhere. And then they built a new wall along the west there.
you probably had to wait a while for that to dry out
Yeah,
before you could get in there.
they still got it done. Well, you and Randy and I did the paint, interior painting. Remember we stained the woodwork and,
There you
Boy,
go.
that was a job. There was a lot of wood.
yeah.
You used a lot of wood
We didn't do the ceiling.
paneling kind of stuff.
We did that paneling
Yeah,
down below
but
the,
it's that thick paneling. It's not that,
yeah,
isn't it?
right.
Good stuff.
Now, was the hall closet, was that originally the stairway?
Yeah,
And then you decided you need more storage space?
right.
So that's why
Oh, really?
the stairs going to the basement are kind of afterthought.
Kind of tight because we figured out we could put it in there. Then you had a closet. Yeah, originally the stairway to the basement was where the,
At
that
the end of the
closet-
hall.
yeah,
Yeah,
where that closet is.
yeah. Oh,
But we also decided that just as well go into the basement from the porch rather than from, in fact, it's better, you know, moving stuff in and out of
Yeah.
the basement.
That's a-
Didn't want to have to come through the, you know,
I'd say
come
the
up the
basement-
steps and through the door and then back down steps.
Let's say the basement is more of a cellar than a basement.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, you've seen it now. Keith started moving his stuff down there.
yeah. Because
It's
Brian
full-
took
it's full of junk.
the Atari.
Yeah, it was in that shelf down there.
Yeah.
Then the next winter, I built those shelves. I spent a winter down there with a saw and
Yeah.
built those shelves.
How about the well and the windmill?
Well, miraculously, it's still working. I've had some repair bills on the windmill, but it's gonna have to last a little longer. Susan checked in the possibility of hooking onto the rural water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, originally, it was, there was a fee of $500 to hook onto the rural water, but the hooker back then was, it was $16 a month minimum, year round. So I got this idea, as long as the windmill was working, why pay $16 a month when a lot of months we aren't even there? So it never joined. Well, then she checked about 2 years ago to see what it cost. They raised the price to $5,000.
They added a little zero there, huh?
And now this past summer, she checked again, and they won't take any more customers.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
They won't even let us hook on until they get another water tower built.
Oh,
'Cause with
well, the
all-
way they're growing, that wouldn't be too much longer.
Yeah, well, they'll hopefully get that done in the next year or two.
You need a drink?
Yeah.
What you
No,
want?
I'll get it.
What do you want?
Just some water.
Let me see if we've got, how much time we got left. We may have to get you to jump ahead based on time. We only have 16 minutes left, so you can do the rest of your life story in 16 minutes?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
16
We'll
minutes.
put him on course.
Oh, we get-
So what do you think will come of the farm? I mean, it's in her name.
I don't know, I want to talk to you about that. I just assumed it wouldn't be on the tape.
All right. All right, we'll come back to that later.
We can talk about retirement, I guess, what we did, or how we decided to.
Yeah, why Phoenix?
Yeah. Yeah, we looked around, that first year of retirement, we went to Florida, went down to Fort Myers and looked around. Visited Andy Graham's parents, that's where they lived, in Fort Myers, Florida. We were down there about 10 days and, because I'd always thought I'd retire in Florida, because that's where Dad and Alice were. And always kind of liked going to Florida, you But Vera had traveled to Arizona with some friends for several years, just for short stays, you know, before we were ever married.
And stayed in Phoenix?
Yeah. These friends of hers, her richest friends, I think, had a condo in Phoenix back then, even though they were still young.
Yeah.
So we went down, well, no, before we went to Phoenix though, we saw an ad in the paper of a condo for rent in Palm Desert. So we said,
Is that a town?
what?
Is that a town?
That's by Palm Springs.
Oh, okay.
They run together.
Oh.
You know, there's hardly a dividing
So
line.
they tell you just rent it and test drive.
Yeah.
Just go to-
For a month. It turned out it's owned by the widow of Ed Bailey, who used to be president of the Union Pacific Railroad. And he'd written a book about his life with the Union Pacific, and there was a copy of it. It was interesting to read about his life and the railroad. But his widow, ran an ad in the World Herald because she said she likes to rent it to Omaha people. So we rented it, and Wayne and Pat Malley came down and stayed a couple of weeks with us. And her brother and his wife from Amarillo came over for a few days. So we checked out Palm Desert, Palm Springs, found out what we liked and disliked. So then we came back home and said, well, we ought to go to Phoenix. So we made arrangements to go to Phoenix, and I remember,
Why Phoenix?
well,
Vera had stayed
she
there.
had spent time there. She liked Phoenix, and the big event. Phoenix is more of a metropolitan area. Palm Springs and Palm Desert are, if you don't golf, there's really nothing else to do. Or that's how we feel. Golf and eat is about all there is.
Yeah. Didn't have any
And
towns.
yeah, there's no town. Well, Phoenix, you know, is a big metropolitan. There's always something going on. There's all kinds of sports, all that. So, and then the other big advantage is that there's like 5 nonstop flights every day
Oh, yeah.
between Omaha and Phoenix. And to get to Palm Desert or to get to Fort Myers, Florida, you got to change planes at least once.
Yeah.
Even back then, and it's still true. There's no direct flights.
Yeah.
But was there some tax incentives also or advantages to moving to Arizona versus?
No, well, that was just because we lived in the retirement community. There's some tax advantage, not a whole lot. But because the area we live in Phoenix, we still pay school taxes. Because our community is part of the city of Peoria. And they have high schools and grade schools. Now, Sun City, of course, everybody heard about Sun City.
Yeah.
Sun City is totally, the whole city is a retirement community. And they don't allow anybody under age 19 to live there. Consequently, they don't have to have any schools. Consequently, there's no school tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the people in Sun City, their taxes are probably less than half what ours are. But when we were getting ready to go to Phoenix, I'd remembered that my old friend Sid Mason up at Day Electronics, I'd heard that he bought a place down there, even though he wasn't totally retired yet. So I called him to see they just bought a condominium unit at Westbrook Village. And I told him the dates we were going to be there, because I said, we'd like to come and see you. He says, well, the only problem is the day before you get there, we're leaving for Australia for 3 weeks. He says, why don't you just stay at our place?
That worked out well.
I said, no, we're going to get a hotel. He said, no, you're staying at our place. Says the golf cart's there, there's 2 cars in the garage.
That was nice.
There's, there's no reason for you to stay in a motel. So we go ahead and do that, and we find this place. And then Wally Waldemath lived there. I knew he lived there too.
Yeah.
So, next day or two, I'm up there by the pro shop looking around with Wally. Wally's showing me all the facilities, and he says, "Well, you know Shirley Ort, you know Roland, don't you?" I says, "Yeah, I know. That's Tom's folks." He
Yeah.
says, "That's them right there." He said, "Roland, Shirley."
It's like being at
So
home.
you found your second home.
Yeah, well, and Shirley is a realtor. So we get acquainted, invariably we end up looking at units, and before we left, we owned one.
Oh my goodness.
Because, immediately there's that friendship connection, and then they introduced us to some other people from Nebraska.
You felt like it could be a good
Yeah,
home. Good
yeah.
second home.
So that's how we got to, well, we were realizing the advantages of Arizona. And I realized the desert is a lot nicer than Florida. You don't have bugs, you don't have mosquitoes, we don't even have flies. You don't
As long as
have-
you don't live there during the summer.
Yeah, you don't have mold because it's too dry.
Yeah.
And
I didn't think
and
about
then
all
these
that.
direct flights from Omaha, that was a big factor. Said we can always get home in short order.
What is the flight? I mean, what is that, about 2 hours?
2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Do you have termites? Isn't
Oh.
that a deal?
There's been a few cases of termites, but if you keep treating the outside area,
That's about the only bad bug.
that's the
though.
only bug you
Yeah.
have.
You got 6 minutes.
6 minutes, wow, to wind up my life. Well,
And you did that 25 years ago, right?
Where?
You said Phoenix.
no,
18 years
12.
ago. 12.
After I retired in 1995. Well, I retired just short of my 65th birthday.
I know you had it down to
4
exact-
months.
Exact. You knew when you could retire to kind of maximize your benefits.
Yeah, within 6 months of 65. And the company continued to provide the insurance coverage. I told Vera I gave her 2 or 3 things. The one thing I gave her was good insurance coverage. Because where she was before, as a realtor, she didn't have any health insurance. Because they're really classed as independent contractors.
Yeah.
They aren't employees of anybody.
Yeah.
So,
You probably gave her good advice on retirement planning.
yeah. And another thing we wisely did, another factor in our decision was that the Mayo Clinic has a big operation in Phoenix, and they are part of Mutual's preferred provider network.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I don't know who told me or how I thought of it, somebody must have mentioned. Said, well, Mayo Clinic doesn't take just everybody as a new patient. And said you should register as a patient even though you're not sick right now. So that if you need a doctor, you're one of their patients. So I went over, they have a satellite clinic out there not far from where we live. And I went over there and I told them our situation and wanted to become patients. So they took our social security number and all that. 2 years later, when we needed a doctor, I went over,
You were ready to go.
walk in, and it
That was
automatically covered.
That was smart.
So that was a smart thing we did. And then I'd always wanted, another factor in retirement, I always wanted to own my own golf cart for some stupid reason. That was my ideal of
You
retirement.
retired.
Get on your golf cart, go, and that's what those kind of areas.
You
Make
saw a lot of
available.
people not only using their golf carts for golf, they were
That was the
Making
transportation.
errands.
Going to the rec center and anymore, the traffic is so bad, not many people get out on, like, go to the drugstore or grocery store, because you gotta get out onto a busy, that Union Hills Drive. It's now a major artery, because it's an entrance onto that Loop 101 freeway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And boy, you don't go out on that in a golf cart.
No.
Well, I heard you once describe it as something like, when you first moved there, you said it was like going to college but not having to go to class.
Right, because, well, I tell a story that Susan asked me what Westbrook Village was like, because she hadn't seen it yet. I said, well, you remember how when you're senior year at college, and, you know, you have all your friends around and the studies aren't too tough, and you kind of hated to leave college. I said, well, Westbrook Village is like college, only we don't have to go to class.
And no test.
You got-
Friends
you got
are
the-
all there.
You got the rec center, you got like the activity center at the college.
It's a big frat party.
That's right, and all your friends.
And no finals.
Right, no finals.
The ever-flowing coffee machine with the donuts on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And playing hearts or spades.
But I would imagine, I always heard people don't want to get pets because the pets die and you get so attached to them. But I mean, because you are so, you get to know people so well, but you know a lot of people, someone's dying all the time, right? So you
Yeah.
just, it's hard dealing with it, huh?
Well, and your grandpa mentioned that to me. He says, the worst part of getting old,
You lose.
you lose your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, like Dad's place, that flag is at half mast all the time. It
Oh,
just
is
stays there.
Yeah.
I thought they should have saved money on the flagpole.
You just had a half of a bowl.
Just have a short.
a short pole to begin with.
That's what I told him. I go, well, why do you have all that extra pole up there? You never use it.
Or put other flags up above there
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
So any last parting comments you want to make? Because I think we're down to like the last 2
Well,
minutes.
I'd say my advice is hopefully you'll have interest in life so that when you're eligible and available for retirement, you retire and enjoy life.
Have lots of things to do.
Yeah, I always think of, I already said it on while you've been here about Jack Weekly. I think is, to me, I never knew the man, but to me that's the saddest way to go. Is
Yeah.
working
Well, there's lots of
working
cases.
into your 70s and just die working.
In
Yeah,
a revolving door.
What's the point?
yeah, what's the point? He had all this money and really never enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So develop interest, particularly when the boys leave. You're gonna have a lot of time.
Now won't be able to get, be teachers. And what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
And we have a teacher shortage. I don't know. Everything comes with trade-offs.
Yep.
All right, so I got the camera rolling.
You got it rolling?
We're rolling. We're live.
My golly. Well,
So what time did you get up finally?
get up.
What time did you get up this morning finally?
I got up about 7. I'd been awake over an hour ago. But do you want me to strip the sheets off of that?
No, I usually just leave them on, and then when the
next
rare
person
guest
shows up?
comes, then I wash them that morning.
Oh, okay.
So it's good and fresh. Good to go.
There's a Christmas cookie over there, Brian.
Good to go.
Over there by the coffee,
Oh, where'd this come from?
out of my suitcase. I realized that.
He brought his own treats.
You don't need to be eating it, or you wouldn't want to eat those on the plate going back?
Well, no, well, you're not gonna eat all of them. There's 3 there, I think.
Ryan, I was gonna make poached eggs.
All right, well then I'll go line up. So you haven't had breakfast?
No.
what time do you normally get up?
Oh, it varies a lot, but I normally get up around 6. Start the coffee, turn on the TV.
You want any juice?
No, I had a big glass yesterday afternoon. At home, they have local news till 7 o'clock, and then they go to network.
Our Fox has, I don't know if I can get up that early, but at 5 they still, it's on. Maybe on at 4,
Yeah.
but they go till 9.
Well, that's what the local station down in Phoenix, they do
Those-
4 hours of live TV every
That is a
morning.
lot to fill, you know?
But they got a staff of about 7 or 8 reporters, and they're out around the city, you know, telling what's going on, or
How big is Phoenix?
it's the 5th largest metroplex in the US.
Oh, okay.
Can you set that out?
Over, no, Melanie,
Okay.
over 5 million.
How many, do you like poached eggs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How many do you want,
Oh, 2 will be fine.
Brian?
2, yeah.
You don't need to do bacon just for me, Melanie.
It's a real easy pack that has 4 in it.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think I want any right now.
So this will be exciting viewing on the camera, us sitting here reading the paper.
Oh, well,
You have it on?
I'll edit. Don't worry, I'll edit.
Well, he can edit it.
If we have anything exciting, I'll keep it, everything else will be edited out.
You have it on right now?
You out?
I'm not going over there.
You've already been over here.
Be sure to edit that part out.
Penn State came back and beat Texas A&M 24-17.
Oh.
Yeah. Here's the big news about the 16th minute. They did it in quite a dramatic fashion.
I'll bet the point spread was a lot more than 3 points on that game.
Yep. And he set an NFL record, 50th touchdown pass of the season.
Oh,
Because that beat,
Manning had 48 or
for the record
49.
book.
Manning had 48 or 49. I think.
Randy Moss had 23.
Wheat toast, okay?
Sure. That, or the golf contest starts up again next weekend in Hawaii.
Which one is that?
I mean, just the PGA
Oh,
tour. The tour for the year starts next week.
well, I never really have understood the year for golf. It goes like 9 months, or how long does it last?
Well, it used to only go like 7 months, but now they go practically the whole year.
Yeah, but it's almost like a new car year. You're always selling cars.
But it's calendar year.
Oh, it is.
Where's your comb? Where's your comb?
The official money
Where's your comb?
contest ends
Where is it?
sometime
Right here.
in mid-November, I think. But then they have those, like Fred Couples calls the silly season.
This is-
That's where he makes it, you know, they have the skins game, they have the 3 tour, they have the father-son.
Yeah, that is kind of a silly season.
But it amounts to a lot of money. He again won $350,000 at the skins game. And,
So of all people, why would you be calling that silly?
yeah, I don't know.
You ought to be calling it the money season.
Survival, because he didn't do very good during the regular tour.
Well, the Cowboys play today. They play the Washington Redskins. They play them about 3 times a year.
I know it. I think they'd get tired of that. Here's a story about some guy that now plays for Oklahoma. Survived a 104-foot fall in his younger days. Down a jagged rock face while climbing in the Rocky Mountains when he was 16 years old.
Oh, that's a parent's nightmare.
He says, by all accounts, he cheated death that day.
Well, no kidding. Never be a rock climber. It's fun going up, it's not too much fun coming down. Now here, this is quite a statement about the Patriots. It says the Patriots completed a perfect but somewhat joyless journey through the regular season. There's something you said about being perfect, but you know the coach is so. You know, as soon as the game's over, he's thinking about the next game, and he
Never enjoys it.
So what's? You kind of wonder what's the point?
Yeah.
You can't have any joy from what you're doing.
Here's a little note about the Whataburger tournament. After losing the last 3 Whataburger finals, North Crowley finally won it,
Oh, good.
beating Monroe Carroll from, they said it was from Louisiana.
Oh, no, Monroe Carroll. Somebody said, okay. There was one from Los Angeles.
What was the score of that one?
72-60.
That's the one that Clint, that Neil Duvall's grandmother, she used to live in Monroe, Louisiana. That L.A. Crenshaw, that was from Los Angeles.
That's on 7 seed.
Yeah, that North Crowley, they're pretty darn good. But then there's a team from Duncanville that they just played I tell you, at SMU Coliseum against the
Oak Hill.
Oak Hill, which is like the mythical #1 team in the country. They lost by 1 point.
A lot of NBA players come out of Oak Hill. Dwayne, have you ever heard of it?
It's a private school that's the one that recruits all over the country. I don't know what their deal is, but like, is it 2 or 3 Mavericks right now graduated from that high school?
That I don't know. Austin can tell you.
It's well, it's two. One guy is the big guy, Doc, and then the other guy is guy I don't like shooting free throws. Stackhouse.
There's another tournament in this Coca-Cola tournament. Some team hit 18 3-pointers.
How many big points did they score? What was the total?
Well, let's see, halftime kick was 10 3-pointers. Only 81 to 56.
A low scoring game.
Yeah.
Well, I like to, do they have a write-up about that Southwest game?
Against you guys?
No, the last night.
I'm looking.
I gotta believe it's pretty unusual to have 100 or 99-96 final. That's a lot of scoring. That's almost 200 points in 32 minutes. What is that? That's almost, you realize they scored almost 6 points a minute?
Okay, here it is. It said Hebron tops Southwest. Trey Anderson's 39 points gave Hebron
39 points. Yeah, Dad was right. That one kid was playing.
championship with 99 to 96 overtime win over Fort Worth Southwest. Southwest had an 8-point lead midway through the fourth quarter.
When they blew it.
Anderson then scored 7 points in an 11-2 run to take the lead at 2:25. Anderson scored 21 points in the first half. The 6'4" senior guard was named the tournament's MVP, averaging 23 points. So I don't see it right up about here. should be, must have the line score here somewhere. Hebron, Southwest. It just shows the score, 58-37. Yeah, here's the line score. So Mike Eberhard had 16 points, Duval 13, Wyatt 11, Austin 9, Kevin Platt 5, Lauren Hinkle 2, Derek Kemp 2. Who's the big guy?
Duval.
Oh, Ross, I didn't remember calling.
No, he's not, they got the wrong, that's his brother.
Oh.
His name is Neil.
Well, that's what I thought. Here's
They
the-
called him Ross?
Ross Duvall, 13.
That's his brother. I don't know how they got that mixed up.
Well, they got all, it's amazing. How do they get all those words and numbers on the page so quickly? Like that game wasn't over till,
They get them wrong sometimes too.
well, but I can see how. Just look at all the stats. Somebody has to type all that, don't they?
No.
How's
Why do they have to type
It's
in?
all computer.
How's it get on the page?
They just enter the score, the computer formats it.
But they gotta enter the names, don't they? And
I think a lot of that is probably done right there at the scores table. Over the internet, they shoot it in, it's
oh, and
already
then,
formatted.
oh,
Most papers now, well, I don't know about papers, but most printing, they use a printing style called XML, what is called extended markup language. In that, as they enter the data, you can also enter in, you don't actually enter it in, but the software you use kind of passes along as you upload it to like the newspaper, all the formatting information for the newspaper. And then how can I explain it? So enough formatting information is associated with the data that now the person who receives the data, they can say, well, I want it formatted differently. And they call it the style sheet. And so you can have your own style, and then the data comes in, and the style and the data combine, and then boom, you just got instant output exactly the way you want it. No one has to ever touch it.
Oh, did you realize Rick Newhasel graduated from UCLA?
Yeah, they said he was kind of a shoo-in because of that.
He was the MVP in the 1984 Rose Bowl. He was a quarterback. Boy,
Well, I'd like to know more about exactly what the gambling thing was. Was it just literally a neighborhood
well, I guess
thing kind of thing?
I don't know for sure.
Could have been a neighborhood thing and then they booked it as a Vegas.
Yeah, could have done that.
Ryan, you get the overcooked bacon
Or
because you're
was
not
it
the
his
guest.
trivials, maybe he was just in a fantasy football pool?
I think I'll have a little,
Which one?
pepper or salt.
Okay.
Did you put any salt on it?
No,
A little butter or? For the toast? Do you want
Now I'm
to
gonna
use this?
bring jelly and butter over. Here's salt and pepper though. Butter better?
What about, what do you guys eat, that soft stuff? Yeah.
I eat butter.
Well, I think the other stuff, they keep saying is better for you than butter. Vera's theory was, well, I just won't eat as much real butter as I would otherwise.
I am.
That's why I should have poached eggs. I've poached eggs.
Well, we really got into it a couple years ago. How many eggs does that thing hold?
6.
6 eggs.
That's my favorite. 'Cause
Well,
you don't
it's
have
not-
to use butter or anything.
Yeah.
And it's not fried up and crinkly on one end. And
Yeah, that really is better for you.
quicker than a hard boil.
Do you have a poacher? I mean, a thing that's made just for poaching?
Yeah. I haven't used it for a long time. You want some butter?
Yeah.
Let's see, if I sit over here, I'm not in the picture.
How do you, oh, you checked it.
Or just turn it off. Not enough.
No. I haven't showered or anything.
How long did you leave them in?
What
To
do you
get
think? 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
And if I go a little over that, it's too
Too hard?
hard. Yeah, that was my Christmas or birthday present one year, the poacher.
Oh,
Got it at Williams in Sonoma.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's gotten Vinny a Christmas gift from William and Sonoma.
I've gotten many.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and one year we got that cookie sheet I love. Mm.
Is Williams Sonoma owned by the same company as Pottery Barn?
That's what I heard, yeah. Well, I know that for a fact because my friend the Lakes,
Yeah.
she one year worked, or a couple years, Christmas at Pottery Barn, and her discount was good at Williams and Sonoma too.
Oh. Because they're always pretty close together in the
Yeah.
shopping center.
What does the Pottery Barn sell?
It's furniture, accessories, they sell china and stuff. But I don't think they sell
Towels.
exactly the same china.
I wouldn't think so.
But it's more home furnishings, and then Williams Sonoma's kitchen. Well, I tell you that story. I ran in there to get that peppermint bark for Tanner's guitar teacher, and it's like 8:30 at night. I was hoping that they'd be open because the square a long time ago, people be milling around looking at the lights, walking around, and the stores would be closed.
Oh.
We just said, boy, yeah, they're missing their opportunity here.
Yeah.
That place was packed. They were open till 10, I think. But there were a lot of people in there. So where did we leave off in the Dwain Horn saga?
I think I don't know. We covered a lot of different angles.
We covered a lot of different. We talked about my dad and my mother. start talking about the family, there's actually quite a few early deaths.
Yeah.
You know, my aunt, my mother, my grandpa Doherty, he was only 60.
But he died.
He had a stroke. Probably had a bad heart, but he was doing heavy manual labor as a blacksmith.
Oh, yeah. And now where was his blacksmithing? In Moulton?
No, it started there, but then, because that's where my mother went to high school, and that's where met with